This university was founded and has lived on dreams of doing the difficult, the unprecedented, and even the impossible. In 1839, a group of New England Methodists met in a building in downtown Boston and planned the first college for the education of Methodist ministers. 30 years later, William Fairfield Warren, Lee Claflin, Isaac Rich, and Jacob Sleeper set in motion a new dream, the first American university to combine the model of the New England Undergraduate College with that of the German university. And they were such dreamers that they also made it the first university in the world to be open to women in all its programs. As President Warren put it in words that have never been bettered, artificially to restrict the benefits of such an institution to one half of the community by a discrimination based solely on a birth distinction is worse than un-American. It is an injury to society as a whole, a loss to the favored class, a wrong to the unfavored. At the same time, Charles W. Eliot was beginning his 40-year presidency of Harvard. I'm sure you all know that I would never criticize our sister institution across the river, and certainly not any president who has managed to stay in office for 40 years. But candor compels me to note that President Eliot did not share President Warren's views. In his inaugural address, Dr. Eliot announced that Harvard would not admit women. He stated his reason: the difficulties involved in a common residence of men and women of immature character and marriageable age, that's you, by the way, are very grave. Dr. Eliot wanted to make it perfectly clear that he was not proceeding out of what he called crude notions about the innate capacities of women. Indeed, he said, the world knows next to nothing about the natural mental capacities of the female sex. Given his ignorance, he concluded that caution was the watchword. At Boston University, we threw caution to the winds. Our founders, all devout Methodists, also ensured that their university would be open to people of all religious beliefs and of none. Their charter specified that no instructor or student shall ever be required by the trustees to profess any particular religious opinions. And from the very first, Boston University has admitted students without regard to race. Another half-century passed, and President Merlin dreamed of a university that would be centered on the south bank of the Charles River and would recognize its obligation to the city around it. He began to purchase land on which his dream would be realized, and it was brought into being by his successor, Daniel L. Marsh. The power of Marsh's belief in the destiny of Boston University sustained him and the university through the harrowing decade of the Depression. 26 years ago, I accepted the presidency of Boston University, in part because I was inspired by the dreams of my predecessors, and in part because, like them, I had dreams of my own, dreams of a great university built on their foundations. It should be obvious that in dreaming fantastical dreams of an implausible future, I was not an innovator, for that was my inheritance from Warren, Merlin, and Marsh. I was intrigued with Boston University because I saw it as a school pregnant with unrealized and unsuspected greatness. I soon discovered that there were others here who saw it in the same light. It seemed obvious to me that Boston University must be moved to greatness, for I believed that a university is either excellent or it is a university in name only. It is obviously for others, yourselves included, to judge how well I succeeded in bringing my dreams for Boston University to reality. I will only say that to the extent that I have succeeded, it is because many, many others, staff, faculty, students, and trustees, shared my dreams and worked hard to embody them. A generation has passed since I first addressed a Boston University commencement. For among today's graduates are children of graduates at my inaugural commencement. From my first commencement in 1971 through today, my 26th, I have witnessed the enthusiasm of 180,000 graduates as they receive their degrees. Indeed, 70% of the living alumni and 60% of all the alumni of this 157-year-old university have graduated since I became president in 1971. And now it is time for me to make my valedictory and to graduate with you. 49 years ago, I left college in times that, although deeply flawed by legal segregation and other forms of racism, were on the whole joyous and happy. World War II was only 2 years past, and veterans, supported by the GI Bill, were crowding into colleges and universities, anxious and eager not only to get on with their lives and start families, but to devour books of poetry and philosophy, better to understand and express all they had experienced in the years of combat and uncertainty. It was a time full of promise and fulfillment, energized by the euphoria of victory and freedom from the bondage of economic depression. We were confident that our future and our country's future would be better and happier than that of previous generations. It was, I believe, simpler for us than it is for you members of this graduating class. For us, there was great excitement and joy in finding ourselves alive in a world in which war and economic depression seemed issues of the past. It seemed a world of security and unlimited promise for living intensely and well. Distractions were few, and although television was on its way, entertainment was still largely a do-it-yourself activity among family and friends. As a parent and a grandparent, no less than as president of Boston University, it worries me, as it must worry all who care about the members of this graduating class, that your opportunities in life may be more limited than those of our generation. The world you enter is not known for its domestic tranquility and security. Rather, you move into a world polluted not only environmentally but socially by trash radio and television, drug dealing, child pornography, and random violence. Television has greatly accelerated the emergence of a mass culture. This was foreseen as early as 1929 by the great Spanish liberal philosopher and opponent of Franco, José Ortega y Gasset. In that year, he published his Revolt of the Masses, in which he described the vertical barbarians, those who besiege civilization not from without the gates, but from within. They arise within a culture and pull it down to their level. The rise of trash television would be inconceivable without an audience of vertical barbarians. These programs are not, after all, produced by perverse philanthropists dedicated to debasing public understanding. Rather, they are produced by people who know what sells and for whom profits are the only consideration. How does one live in a civilization under siege? Ortega y Gasset, writing in a Spain staggering toward a bloody civil war, attained great clarity. He divided humanity into two groups: those who make great demands on themselves, piling up difficulties and duties, and those who demand nothing special of themselves. This last group he called mere buoys that float upon the waves. This is a frankly elitist conception, and in our time, elitism has become a dirty word, except, of course, in sports and in dog racing, where the pursuit of excellence and the celebration of excellence is still the norm. But as a matter of fact, there is nothing wrong with democratic elitism based on talent and virtue. True elitism values the excellent without regard to where it may be found. In contrast, false elitism identifies excellence not in individuals, but in hereditary classes. The notion, for example, that white males are, as a group, more excellent than black females is a perfect example of false elitism. And true elitism recognizes the excellent in individuals without regard to irrelevant considerations like race, sex, or social class. By deciding to pursue your education at Boston University, you have joined the democratic elite. You have expressed your determination to resist the easy way of life by refusing to be satisfied with what you already are. By your decision to accept the demands and the duties of a higher education, you have expressed your rejection of a complacent life submerged in mass culture. And you dream of personal fulfillment and of making contributions to society that will require your continuing dedication and efforts in the years ahead. Boston University, true to its mission and to the dreams of its founders, has encouraged your efforts by imposing rigorous standards. This has been the duty of your professors and mentors, and by your aspiration, dedication, and hard work, you have distanced yourselves from the barbarism of our time. You may, of course, watch MTV, but you watch it with an ironic detachment that sees it as cool rather than hot, and you break for a snack when Beavis and his colleague come on. You graduate concerned for others and their rights, and with an understanding of the procedures of thought and discovery by which insight and knowledge are attained, and the standards by which theories and ideas are tested. Following the defeat of Germany, the philosopher Karl Jaspers faced a daunting challenge. He proposed a means for the German universities to redeem themselves from the barbarism of the Third Reich. And we should remember that this barbarism was all too often, though with honorable exceptions, heartily embraced by German professors and German students. Universities must be free, Jaspers insists, to pursue the truth wherever the chase takes them. But he denied them any freedom to engage in propaganda, even when, and indeed especially when, it was propaganda for what the university faculties and administrations believed was the better cause. His insight remains a useful guide today because there are people who believe that it is not only acceptable but imperative that universities be committed to political positions and become instruments of political action. This entails a commitment to propaganda and to the suppression of what is seen as politically incorrect. When this happens, universities become dominated by ideologues, by people who derive facts from their opinions rather than their opinions from facts. Jaspers says, in the common search for truth, there must be no barriers of charitable reserve, no gentle reticence, no comforting deception. There can be no question that might not be raised. At present, there are increasing efforts to introduce taboos with regard to certain forms of research and exploration. Researchers may be sharply criticized, for example, simply for raising the possibility that there are differences between the sexes of fundamental importance. In a university, there can be no taboos against research that relies on evidence and arguments. No question can be properly excluded from a university if it is asked with intellectual rigor. Astrologers, alchemists, and those who assert that there was no Holocaust fail to meet this test. They do not accept the discipline by which truth is attainable. Any question of concern to human beings which can be pursued methodically by means of argument and experimentation is, by contrast, welcome and appropriate in a university. As Jaspers concludes, we belong together. We must feel our common cause when we talk to each other. This is the ethos it has been my concern to create and encourage at Boston University, an ethos in which students can learn, think, and mature in relative independence from the barbaric influences of our time, free from the din and blinders of mass thought and action, to become fully themselves as individuals. The survival of our civilization depends upon our faith in our ideals, rules, practices, and institutions. Far from illusory, they are more real than the tables and chairs, motor cars and computers, which we can do without. What is essential, and by being essential, therefore real, are our laws, ideals, customs, and institutions that make us civilized and enable us to reach out to one another, to seek and dispense knowledge, beauty, and moral insight. The goals you set for yourselves, the demands you make upon yourselves, will turn on your conception of yourself and your nature as a human being. You will be tempted to accept a debilitating and limiting view of your potentiality by reference to prevailing dogmas that are put forward falsely, as if they rested on the authority of science. You know the litany. Copernicus proved that mankind is neither at the center of the universe nor the master of the universe. Darwin showed that mankind is nothing special, but merely one among millions of evolving species. And Freud claimed by his discovery of the unconscious that the individual is not even master in his own house. Any of these limited views can deny you membership in the company of those who make the highest demands upon yourselves. It is far better to overestimate the significance of our lives and the extent of our powers than to sell them short. As William James writes in The Will to Believe, if I refuse to bail out a boat because I'm in doubt whether my efforts will keep her afloat, I am really helping to sink her. You can never succeed in realizing your highest dreams and ambitions if you do not strive for them with all the force of your personality. But you will never be able to marshal the powers of your own being unless you believe you can attain your highest dreams. There is every reason for us to believe in ourselves as free, self-determining, responsible agents, fully aware of our capacity to set standards for ourselves and work all out to make them real. If we fail to take this dimension of our lives seriously, we find ourselves immediately constricted by lesser, crippling conceptions of ourselves. To adopt, as if it were true, an unproven materialism which denies all transcendent meaning to human existence inevitably dwarfs the human spirit. But the possibility of transcendence, of search for goals that are beyond our present reach, has been demonstrated in the lives of thousands of individuals throughout the history of mankind and in the lives of the individuals we have honored this morning. The realization is up to each of you. For as Shakespeare said, we are such stuff as dreams are made on. Without our dreams, without our aspirations, we are nothing. This class of Boston University graduates and the 25 classes that have gone before have for a quarter of a century occupied and justified a great part of my life. The Romans had a phrase for an occasion like this: "Hail and farewell, I wish you the best of all of your lives."